Alexis Morgan, you're back.
I am back. Thanks for having me on, Matt. I mean, I did come to downtown just for this. I was here earlier today.
You came here twice?
I came to downtown twice today.
Dude, okay, you should have told me that, because I have a promise to myself that I will never drive down here twice in one day ever again. I almost had to do it this morning, but one of the reps that I had for a 6:30 canceled last second, so I didn't have to come down here until, like 11 or something. Yeah. Don't ever do that again, especially not on my part. I
did try to get out of here, like, come down to the studio.
We are at the end of the session, and there's so many bills. You and I, again, you're busy, but you and I were planning on, like, every time we talk, it's like, oh God, there's this one, and then there's this one, and there's this one. So, like, I had an open hour. We had to snag it.
Oh yeah. No complaints. Just
no complaints.
This is what our story was.
The story.
To get to this moment.
God bless it.
Yes.
Talk to me what you got today.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's just start with the fact that the legislature is still going.
Committees are still open.
We're still going. This is $35,000 to $40,000 a day for taxpayers. $35,000 to $40,000 per day. Every day the legislature is in session. So I think that is a valuable note for. It's like, what do I want to say?
Fiscally conservative individuals to consider.
Right. Thank you. I need that. I
You're welcome.
I need the help for my brain. It's like not working right now. So ultimately, like, I looked this up a while ago, and there are about 40 states in the United States that have some type of a time limit on their legislative session, whether that is they get X number of days or they have to end by a certain date. Idaho is not one of them, which I find really interesting. Just to the south, Utah, they have 45 days. I was watching a lawmaker down there, and he came on. I mean, he does like a lot of social media stuff, and he said, okay, we got a couple of hours till midnight, hoping to get my bill through, and I think we can do it, and if not, that's the end of it. Like, you don't get to keep going. So there are, some pros and cons to that, but I think it's interesting that 40 states have that and Idaho does not. Idaho also does not have a limit on the number of bills a lawmaker can bring forward. So some of these lawmakers are churning out bills left and right. And you and I have spoken about the value of bringing in stakeholders, of understanding issues to make quality laws, right? We have these proposed bills, and we want to have quality legislation because, Matt, these are our lives. We live every day in this world, and we want to make sure that we have laws that are intentional, solving really real problems, are helping us, navigate, making sure that we're, law-abiding citizens in these communities, right? All the things. And it's just my observation that if we have some lawmakers who are just churning out 20, 30, 40, 50 bills, my thought is like, what the hell are you doing? Are you really being intentional about all of these different issues that you're bringing forward? Or are you just churning out stuff to get stuff out?
Okay, listen, this is what I think we should really consider. I see where you're going with this, which is like, hey, maybe we limit the session or maybe we limit the bills. I think we should go the opposite way. I think we should have a 12-month session, and I think we should have a minimum bill count. And what the reason, because if anybody's seen the film Brewster's Millions with Richard Pryor and John Candy, fantastic film. But Brewster is the guy, is Richard Pryor, and he inherits from his rich uncle or something. His rich uncle dies like $300-400 million deep. And he's like, instead of getting it, there's this deal where he's like, okay, we're going to give you $30 million. You have to spend all 30 million of these dollars by this time frame. You cannot make a single dollar of investment. You can't make a return on it. So he was forced to make all these insane, absurd investments. Like, he invested in some company to go to, the Arctic and grab an iceberg and install diesel engines in it and like bring the iceberg over. So it's like the freshest, cleanest water. I think we stretch this out so much. And I think we make people bring so many bills that they hate it. And they're like, I want to get out of here as quickly as possible. And we just gear them towards like January 1st. They're like, can we be done by next week? And everybody's like, does anybody have a problem? It's like, you got a problem? And it's like, no. And then it's like, then it'll be over. It'll be over by the end of January. Yeah. Because like right now, we have some people bring like 100 bills or something.
Yeah,
it's like they're just stretching.
And today I saw that there were I think there were 7 RSs in one particular committee this morning at 8 a.m. And by 8:10, the committee just did like a full sweep. And it wasn't even 8:10. I don't think it was like 5 minutes in. The committee just did a full sweep and approved all the RSs to come in and be printed as bills. So I'm just saying, the question is, how much quality are we creating when we churn out a lot of quantity and we're not focusing on, a specific or several specific issues? I just am curious. What's the quality when we have that much quantity? Like, someone might have a good answer. I'm sitting here like, ugh.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I know, starting this episode out strong with like, we're still here.
We're still here. And it's a tricky business, right? It costs the taxpayers money to be here. There is no limit to the number of bills that people can bring. Representative Mathias was talking about I think it was like the pink slip or purple slip
Purple,
or blue. There it is, purple
yeah.
slip, where you can just sign in a lobbyist for an organization and they can go in and work with the legislative office and they like just work on bills. And it's like, there's no problem with people bringing things forward. There's like, what I was hearing the other day? This is kind of interesting. Somebody had there was a critique of a bill. I can't remember which one it was, but it was an obviously out-of-state bill that was being applied to Idaho because they referred to sheriff's offices as sheriff departments. In Idaho, it's a sheriff's office because it's an elected position, but not in all states. So they had taken a bill in language from another state and not even Idaho'd it. They hadn't even stamped it with Idaho language.
Yeah.
So they were saying sheriff departments, and it's like, it's not a department, bro. It's an office.
Yeah.
And again, just a real clear articulation of they're just grabbing bills from other places and not even giving me the decency of faking like they like me,
No.
right? Like they're just copying, they're just swiping right. They don't even care who I am. I know, just another swipe right. Yeah, let's bring this bill in.
Oh my gosh, dating apps. That's a reference to dating apps.
Could you imagine
gosh.
if we had to go on dating apps now?
No, that'd be terrible.
That would be the worst thing ever. It would be my worst nightmare to like have to swipe or have somebody swipe on me. How demeaning would that be? They already do it to me on YouTube.
Swipe.
No, that's swiping off
Swipe up.
the infinite scroll. Yeah,
gosh,
that'd be
okay.
wild
Yeah,
times.
so
All right,
that's
so hit
fun.
me with some bills.
Yeah. So one is the JFAC. Okay, we have JFAC. That's the Joint Finance and Appropriation Committee. They're the ones that do all the money. They make the money decisions. And so they've been having, there's been some challenges there because we are short on funds for this fiscal year and then the upcoming fiscal year. Lawmakers have been making different comments about it. There was one lawmaker who said, we put ourselves in this situation. We're talking about like we have to tighten our belts, but the legislature isn't tightening its belt. So there was one of the bills that came out, for money from the JFAC to the Senate. The Senate actually rejected on a 25-10 vote to say, no, we're not going to accept that budget. And what was interesting was that there were two different groups that said no for different reasons. So that's why we got the big, huge number of 25 senators saying no. So just in terms of JFAC, the legislature's number one responsibility is to pass a balanced budget, which is why I think one of the reasons we're still here, because they're still squabbling in there about what that's going to look like and where are these cuts going to happen. So one of those cuts, it was just at JFAC today. And some different things are happening because I saw some people right afterwards saying we've got to try to get some of these senators to vote no on this, is regarding IDLA funding, the Idaho Digital Learning Alliance, this is the online option for students. Any student can access public, private, homeschool. They can all access this. And
which is also very specifically relevant because in rural Idaho, you don't necessarily have the capacity to have in a class of 7 a calculus teacher, but you have, for instance, in Reagan, somebody going to, I believe, Columbia or Dartmouth, on an engineering scholarship because this guy was able to access IDLA classrooms and engage in education that was delivered by the State Department of Education remotely. So if you have people in Chalice or Salmon or Riggins or whatever rural place you might insert, Alma, whatever it is.
Yeah. So for clarification, IDLA is not through the Department of Ed. It is actually, it has a superintendent. It is its own entity.
I'm sorry, I meant state funded.
Yeah, state funded. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, that's the idea, which is, look, this is provided by the state of Idaho, right?
So ultimately,
which is why they're quarreling over funding.
Yeah,
because it's provided by the state of Idaho.
Provided by the state, and this is they're going to receive. It's right now. It's proposed a 50% budget cut to IDLA, which is just massive.
Big budget cut.
It's a big budget cut. And I think one of the things that, so listen, this is going to impact at least 1 in 5 rural students, because 1 in 5 rural students is accessing IDLA. It's going to impact 1 in 9 urban students because they're accessing IDLA. And a lot of these kids who are accessing IDLA here in, so I can speak for my kids, and my kids all used it starting in 7th grade forward. And part of the reason was because they wanted to spend time in the music area of school. They, in order to be able to do marching band, for example, you have to have another band credit. There's all these things that align for rules, but you have to have so many credits to graduate. Plus they want to do all these other things. And so what these kids will do sometimes is called an overload, where they will have their classes that they are attending during the day, and then they'll overload their schedule to add an additional class so they can get that class done, maybe 7th, 8th, 9th grade, so that when they hit 10th, 11th, 12th, it's freed up their schedule from the requireds because they've done those already.
And they can hit the electives that they want to
They
hit.
can hit the electives that they want to hit. And so IDLA, these classes made it possible for my 3 oldest kids to be able to get some of these APs, honors, and music classes that they wanted to hit to help them either prep for college or have the kind of experience that they wanted to for their high school years, which is ultimately, when I think about it, it's for the kids. So one of the things that this IDLA 50% fighting over this funding represents or reveals rather, is that Idaho's funding formula is extremely out of date. It's not modern. And I don't think that it has not been updated since the 90s. And unfortunately for us, Matt, that was 30 years ago.
It's 36 years ago, actually.
A long time ago. And so that's a long time to not have an updated funding formula. Long time. And so ultimately what this means,
do you remember that South Park or
you're
the
done. You're
Saturday Night
super-
Live? It's good. Dog show. Long time.
Okay.
I love you. You're shot. I'm sorry. So the bottom line is funding formula hasn't been updated. So the argument could be made, which is look, they already aren't receiving a dump truck of funding, and we're going to cut it 50% further, which is going to exacerbate the access that our kids have in rural areas and high performing areas. Yes.
And what I want to say, and I've been telling, and you know what, I might have said this on your show a year ago or a couple months ago. I don't know, but I'm going to say it again.
Say it again.
So I'm a mom of 4 kids. And when I make dinner, let's say I make meatloaf, which by the way, I never made when my kids were little because they would have never eaten it, but we're going to go with meatloaf because it's the American meal. So if I make them meatloaf, let's say I'm going to spend, I don't know, $10 on that meal. I'm spending $10 on dinner for my family of 6. But if 2 of my children, which would be accurate, 2 of them would say, I cannot eat that. And as a mom, it's okay, sure. I go through all of the steps of, listen, because some people are going to say, well, you should force your kids to eat that or they don't eat. Okay, sure. Okay, so we're going to set that aside and we're going to say, okay, at this point, I need to make somewhat of a separate option for them. So these 2 kids need a separate option. So now instead of $10 for this meal, it's going to cost me more like $14 to $15 total. So I'm spending an approximately extra $5 on food to feed my family that once cost me $10. And the reason it costs me $15 now is because I've added choices. So here's the big message for every Idahoan and every lawmaker. When we have a lawmaker stand and say, and one did last year when they were talking about a particular bill, when they say we spend more money on education in Idaho than we ever have before, they're right. But one of the number one reasons for that is because we have massively increased the choices for our kids. And we are now in 2026, and Idaho is a leader in education school choice and all the options that we have. But the reality is, when we increase options, we increase the amount of money that we have to spend to cover all of those options. Just like a mom, family of 6, I go from one meal, now I got to provide an additional option, which is what we are doing in education. I'm not knocking it. My children have benefited from all of these options. But if we have all of these options and we want to provide choices, we have to spend more money. And we can't, in some essence, we cannot shit all over the fact that we can't be angry about the fact that we spend more money when we support all of the choices and we tout that we're so proud of all of these choices.
That was the name of a bill last year. The school choice tax credit. I think school choice pulls very high, and they called it school choice because they're like, voucher doesn't pull high.
Right.
So they named it school choice.
Yes.
And Senator Den Hartog, the first time I met and spoke with her in 24, she was like, we might have to pay more money for more choice.
Right.
This was before the bill was even out. And I was like, that's so great to hear that, because her point, not great that we're spending more money, but she was like, I'm not proposing decreasing the K-12 budget.
Except they did.
She just wasn't at that time.
No,
Just to be clear.
it was those times. It was those times when we were getting a lot of additional funding from the federal government. We were having more revenues than projected in the state. Like post-COVID, Idaho did really well. And so they started cutting taxes. They started cutting funding. And so now we find ourselves in this situation where we are short on funds, but they still want to have all these options. So now they're cutting all the options. But mind you, let's be really clear. What are they not cutting? They are not cutting that tax credit. The
school choice tax credit.
The school choice tax credit.
Because we like school choice.
All the voucher, that has not been cut at all, which we said it wouldn't. $50 million was approved last year, and it's going out this year. And that's the one thing that has not been touched. K-12 is getting touched. IDLA is getting touched, but that
higher ed's definitely getting slashed.
Higher ed's getting slashed. So,
they're getting hammered.
So I just think it's really important. I just am trying to say what is. These are things that are. This is the situation we are in. And so now, because we have all these choices and we don't have the funding that we need to cover all of these choices, certain categories are getting hit. So anyways,
understood
there you go.
On that. That's there's a lot there. And I had Jeff Simmons in recently. Very much enjoyed
Who
that
is the
guy.
superintendent of IDLA.
Right. I feel so bad for him too. Not because of the budget cuts, but because the first time I had him on, I didn't know what IDLA is. And he had to like suffer through the conversation with me like a year or something ago. And now I'm like, Jeff, I understand what you do now. Like, come have a different conversation with me.
Yeah.
And he just has to suffer through like some crummy podcaster, like trying to understand the fumble through what IDLA is.
Gosh.
The other thing I would really like to point out is you have a soda from Mavericks right there.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea for you to drink a little caffeine.
Yeah.
But I also would like to point out that when I said, hey, Alexis, I have an hour open spot. Would you like to come in? You said yes. I said, could you grab me a coffee? You're like, I don't want to stop for a coffee for you. And you didn't, which is fine, but you stopped for a drink for yourself at Mavericks.
Well, you still have a coffee in your hand, by the way.
Because I had to go out because I was like, Alexis ain't saving me today.
Oh my gosh, but you're missing the other part, which I didn't say I wasn't willing to stop. I said I don't want the coffee smell in my car. That's actually what I said to you. For the record.
There was definitely something I don't want to stop. Maybe you said I don't want to stop and have the coffee smell.
There you go.
Maybe it was an and statement, but it was definitely an I don't want to stop. You could put a cork in it. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Good on that one. Here's one for you. I mentioned this to you earlier. I had a very intense conversation with Terry Pickens yesterday about House Bill 822, which is Representative Scogg's proposal.
I was just there. That's right before the show. I was like, I'm going to go to the Capitol. And I walked in and people were testifying. They were asking a doctor. Like, I was listening to that. Sorry, keep going.
No, it's fine. And I think Terry brought up some fantastic points specific to the bill. She was like, this is an excessively large, she had a technical term for it, but it was like an excessive fine. She was like, there's some manner of child abuse that you get fined $1,000 for. And, you're going to do some jail time too, but you get fined $1,000. She's like, this is $100,000. And I believe the way she said it, she's like, there's no nexus from 1,000 to 100,000 that really makes this clear. I was like, okay. So she's like, so this is going to get challenged. Even if it passes, it'll get challenged on like constitutional merits, just being excessive. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's bad. She's like, it's vague. It's not sufficiently clear what these people are making. I was like, okay. She also brought up the problem with, she made it very analogous to the trigger law for women's reproductive care. She's like, listen, after the trigger law, we saw an exodus of, it's like 40% of the OBGYNs in the state. She's like, if you have some $100,000 fine on the books that, either doesn't get challenged or gets challenged unsuccessfully, you're going to have some people that are anxious about it that just want to be school teachers. And, they'll either leave the profession or they'll leave Idaho to engage in that profession somewhere else. I'm like, okay, so she brought up a lot of considerations. But the one that I'm continuing to try to tease out is the concept of government overreach. Now, the reason this is unique to me, the nature of the bill is that, say you're a school teacher or you're a counselor or you're an administrator, and you see me, Matt, the high schooler, who's a dude walking around in a mini skirt with eyeliner, and you're like, that might be indicating Matt is socially transitioning, right? He has gender identity issues or whatever it might be. The bill would require you to notify my parents within 72 hours, like, hey, just so you know, like, I witnessed Matt doing this, right? And whatever that means, and you can talk to Matt about it. Now, first off, there are problems, technical problems with, if you and 9 other teachers see me walking through the quad, do all 9 or all 10 of you and the other 9, have to all send emails to the parent, right? Or is it like one email goes out? How would the 10 people know how would the other 9 people know if you sent an email? They're like, I assumed Alexis was sending the email, right? So there are some technical problems with it. But the concept of overreach, which is, Terry said, look, this is government overreach because what you're essentially doing is making teachers and counselors and administrators monitors. You're making them gender identity monitors. And if they monitor and see something, right? If they see something, it's proven that they see something and they don't say anything, they could incur this fine. Hold that in your head. Other people say this is government overreach because how could they possibly know something and not tell the parents? So the concept of overreach is used by both sides of this issue, which is it's overreach for you to step in between me and my child and know something and say, Alexis may beat her child or kill her child if Alexis finds out about this. I can't tell Alexis. People think that's overreach. And the other side is, how could you possibly want the teacher to be now a monitor, and the state government's going to fine them $100,000 if they don't say something about a miniskirt or eyeliner? That's overreach. The concept of overreach, the principle of overreach, is applied on both sides of these arguments. And it's like, okay, well, which principle wins the day?
Yeah.
If overreach is bad, both people are right.
Oh my gosh.
How do you tease this one out?
Yeah, well, it was interesting, listening to the bill, because I didn't know anything about it, right? I happened to walk into the room. That's what was there. And as I was sitting and listening, and, it was a physician, that was talking, and now listening to you, I'll be honest, my automatic thought that as you were describing this was like, okay, so now we want adults to start looking at what kids are wearing and paying attention to their clothes in a way that feels like, I don't know, that kind of feels a little creepy to me. And I can appreciate that's like, okay, I'm going to take myself back to like the 90s, and I'm going to remember what it was like to be a teenager in the 90s. And I was listening to actually one of the lawmakers say like, okay, here we have the definition here on social transition. It's a little vague. Here we have the definition here. Also vague. What exactly are we expecting people to notice that is the line? Where is the line? Because some kids go through like, I'm going to wear an all black phase, or I'm going to wear like really baggy clothes, or baggy clothes are in style. Right. Or I mean, because, we watch things go in and out of style, and ultimately, like, this is pointing, I think, to a much bigger problem. And now there is, there are people wanting to police different things. And I can appreciate what you're saying here, where it's like, gosh, both groups are acknowledging that this is, government overreach. And it's as if they're just, the people have like lost the ability to trust each other and to work together. And it would be weird to me if I were a teacher and I had Sally in my classroom, and Sally is a sophomore, and I'm the history teacher, and Matt, you're the math teacher. And I walk up to you and I say, I've been noticing Sally. Have you been noticing what she's wearing lately? That feels weird. That feels really weird.
And if I have to say yes,
and you're a man,
I'm like, I have been seeing Sally actually.
And I'm not saying I'm not saying that people are wrong for wanting. I agree with parents, and that it's like, listen, if you know something about my kid and you're withholding that from me, that's wrong. Like
Right.
I have like that is
And that's
wrong.
the principle driving this.
Right.
But then when we have to make a bill around that principle, how do we flush out the bill?
Yeah.
How do you tease out the
Yeah.
bill in a functional manner that's not offensive to our Constitution, that isn't going to be very easily overcome, that's not going to drive people? It's like, okay, like I don't know a single parent who's like, yes, if my child is going through a difficult time, I would like a government individual to withhold information from me, especially if they're a minor. Nobody would want that.
No.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, but is this the solution to that? Right? So again, when we're talking about crafting bills, as we've been talking this entire session, this is this large anxiety. Now, mind you, this is a tiny portion of the population.
Yes.
Right?
And I did hear, this was something that just like really struck me. I listened to an individual give a testimony regarding a bill, and it was an individual that said, when you look at me, you see something. And if someone knows that it's actually something else, like this was a trans individual. And so he was saying, you know, like it was the bathroom one. And I listened to this individual describe what it would be like for him to go into the male bathroom, because he's a trans male, and go into the male bathroom and then know if someone else knows that he's a trans male. And technically, he's not supposed to be in that bathroom because that's not his biological sex. And so then he can get arrested, pay a fine. And then he said, but if I say I'm going to follow the law and I'm going to go to the women's bathroom and I walk into the women's bathroom behind, I don't know, a teenage girl, essentially, and a woman, and the husband's out in the hallway and sees that, and then like there's some freak out in the bathroom and the husband comes and smashes my face, I now am that husband is actually going to pay less of a fine than I am for not following the law. Like,
Right.
And then this individual is describing the things that are going through his mind. Now, mind you, I don't know the details and I don't know the particulars of this bill. This was the individual's interpretation as he was standing and giving his testimony. But as I was listening to it, I thought, wow, those are some things that I hadn't thought about, you know, in all of the things, right? Which is why we have
100%.
public testimony. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a lot of things. And
That's
then
a lot of things.
And I've also heard someone say recently that we have there have been a lot of bills introduced in the Capitol for a population in Idaho, to your point, that is less than 1%. And so to me, this points to like a much larger story in our communities and the things that that we're all grappling with. And I can say I can speak to my experience to say that like when lawmakers have engaged in the bill making process and they have engaged stakeholders in a way that is intentional and seeking to get insight and understand and craft a piece of legislation that is going to be quality. It's not to say that there's not going to be pushback or whatever.
Sure.
All of those things can still happen. But generally speaking, I think for me personally, I have a lot more confidence in that bill because it's gone through a process. That process is not required. But for someone who, like, I ask questions like, what problem are we trying to solve? Is this the right level of governance to solve this problem? What stakeholders have been a part of this conversation to help get us to this point? I think I heard you say that like were there almost like 1,000 bills introduced into Idaho?
Yeah.
Like just a lot. And so again, it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Here's a question for you. Representative Skog is a very bright attorney.
Yeah.
Do you think he even intends to get this bill passed?
I have no idea.
When you say, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Know.
Is this bill?
I've never met him. I don't know.
What I can tell you is it took about 10 seconds for Terry Pickens to explain excessive penalty. I'm like, makes sense. She's like, so this won't even pass. I'm like, okay, if it's that black and white, and by the way, I don't know anything else that has like a $20,000 fine, $50,000 fine, $100,000 fine plus loss of licensure. These are crazy things, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, are these bills being crafted to even pass, or are they designed to draw everyone's attention because they actually don't even affect 1% of the population. Like, we're crafting a bill, and the primary objections that Terry Pickens had was, we have to protect the one young person who feels gender identity conflict. I don't know how to articulate it correctly.
Right.
Has a non-accepting parent who would also commit violence or murder against that kid. Now, each of these things that I articulated reduces the number of people. So it's like, okay, less than 1% somebody who's like experiencing significant gender identity confusion, right? And is like, has a parent who wouldn't accept them. And that parent would, commit harm. And the harm would be so substantial, like all of those things. So it's like, we're discussing a bill that literally would be affecting like 2 people, 1 person. Now, 1 person's too many. Like, nobody wants a youth being hurt ever.
No.
But again, why are we even talking about this bill? Why is it sucking the oxygen out of the room at the end of the session when we are grappling with these gigantic budget cuts? Medicaid expansion repeal got introduced as well, like a week or so ago. Yeah. So all of a sudden, all of these crazy things are snowballing right at the end of the session, going back to something that you and I spoke about last legislative session. I even spoke with Dr. Jackie Kettler about it. It's like, bills are introduced for like 10 different reasons. Yep. And only one of them is to actually change the law. And there are 9 others, including running a smokescreen for other bills. So now it's like, keep your eyes open. What's happening in the legislature? There's this big scary thing sucking up the attention in the room over here. What's happening over here?
No,
so
it's
now I'm
so
like,
true.
that's why I want to talk to you today too. Cause like, what else is happening? Is there something else big happening right now that we're not paying attention to?
Well, no, it's a great question. I do know that just today, or yesterday, the governor signed into law that schools now must offer, they are required to have a moment of silence, 60-second moment of silence at the beginning of every school day. And I actually had on my show on the Purple Zone, I had a guest on, and he like brought this up, and he was like, listen, he's like, I can appreciate the value of, just calmness for a moment. But what are we doing here? What are we trying to solve with this issue? And now we have, with this bill now, we have stacked one more thing on top of all of the things that we are asking our educators to do.
Can we have a moment of silence? Okay.
And so I'm just like, okay, like this one's interesting, because it like passed. And I think a lot of lawmakers were like kind of begrudgingly like passing this, like, okay. And it they can offer an opportunity for prayer. The schools can't require kids to pray. Listen, you're a public entity. You can't require them to do those things. But, I thought about this for a moment today. I was like, okay, if I'm a teacher, what would I do? Because kids get to choose what they want to do. And it's like, okay, like kids could literally do anything for 60 seconds and they just have to be quiet. And I thought, okay, what would be the most productive thing? And I thought, okay, like maybe just like a journal entry, like today's moment of silence, 60 seconds, write whatever you want in your journal.
Are you able to direct the activity within the 60 seconds of silence?
I don't know. It just says that like you cannot tell.
You can journal, just shut up about it.
But you don't get to tell kids what they can do. The other thing, so interesting, okay? The other thing that was interesting, and this bill has come up several times.
Wait, can we stick with the 60 seconds of silence real fast? This is another principled conflict, which is, was there anything obstructing the school districts or school sites from doing this on their own?
No.
Right. So we brought in a state level law. I don't hear a lot of districts screaming like, help. Like we need the 60 seconds of silence. We can't pass this on our own. We need the state to come in. So
I don't hear parents talking about that.
This was a novel thing. Now, mind you, would I like 60 seconds of silence in my life every day? You bet your ass. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, just that one was good. Anyway, like I would love this for my life. That's fine. But if our state individuals, if our individual school sites, if our districts want something, they can do it. Now, I do understand that I have had lawmakers in here during the session. They're like, listen, there are these nuances that you have to understand that there was one in particular regarding a liability thing. I'm like, well, couldn't just individual communities do this if they wanted? They're like, yeah, but the problem is if it gets challenged at the community level, like the community is not going to have the financial backing to, if we have these like tester groups going out trying to test the laws, they're not going to have the resources. So that's why we passed it to the state law. They could have passed it to local, but it wouldn't have held up. So we passed it to the state law, and, the communities like it. And, we think it's a good, I'm like, okay, I understand. There's no liability here. If West Ada wanted to initiate a 60 seconds of silence at the beginning of every day, West Ada could have done that. Like, and every CUNA could do it. Nampa could do it. Valley View could do it. Anybody could do it. Boise School District could do it. So here is something. Maybe it's even a good idea. I have no idea because I don't know how to organize school days, but maybe it's a great idea that could be adopted if the local communities wanted it throughout Idaho. But instead, we had state law come in and sign it into law when we could have done it if we wanted. I don't understand how that represents limited government, and the government closest to the people is the best.
I don't think it does.
Well, that's just your opinion, man.
No, I'm saying I don't think it represents. And you're right. It is just my opinion.
That's just your opinion, man.
There was one thing I wanted to talk about.
I know
the
you're
last time
Mormon,
we were
but
here.
have you seen The Big Lebowski?
Oh my God.
Come on. Have you seen it? The dude abides?
No, I haven't seen it. Oh my gosh, are we going to take a tangent
God.
there?
Just promise me you'll see it before the end of this year.
I cannot make those promises. So here's the
Big
thing.
Lebowski's hilarious.
There's
a beverage here, man.
No, you have now entered a space in which, like, my husband gets. It's like if he recommends that I watch like a TV show or movie, it doesn't matter what it is. If he's like, hey, I think you should watch this for whatever reason, I'm like, I'm just not interested. Like, nah.
Yeah, but that's because he's your husband.
No, it works with other people too a lot. People are like, Alexis, you really should.
You know what you should not do? You should not watch The Big Lebowski. By the end of this year, you should not watch that. That is a terrible idea. I just want you to know, will you promise me you won't watch it? Oh my God. Swear to me you will never see it. Okay. Whatever, go to your next one.
Okay, the next one. Okay, so this one's been introduced a couple of times. It was at the beginning of the session, but this is the Bible verse reading in schools. I was in committee when they brought this. It was Redmond brought this one in, and it was interesting because he basically.
This is like third year of bringing it up, right?
I have no idea.
He brought it up last year as well. Yeah,
this is his second term, I think. So, it was interesting because he brought it forward and he said, like, we want to read this Bible verse and we're not going to tell the kids like what to think about it. It's this, structured experience and then it will be over. So a couple of people asked him questions, and then Representative Matthias asked a question, and he said, we talk a lot in this committee about the importance of getting kids to critically think. And in this bill, what you're suggesting is that you're giving kids the what? The content, but you don't want them to critically think about it. So this bill actually contradicts what we're trying to get kids to do in school. I thought it was a great point. A very technical way of viewing the bill. What's interesting to me though is that after I had this experience, I went home and I was like, okay, because I saw some of the committee members get kind of riled up about the separation of church and state, and Representative Ehart was like, I want people to bring receipts if you think that there should be a separation because of X, Y, and Z, and this is, in our historical history of such and such. And I was like, whoa, there are some massively intense feelings on this. So I went and did a little bit of digging, just a little bit, not much, right? And what I found is what I think that many of us know, which is the United States does not have an official religion established. That was that way from the beginning. While it may be true that many of them did, many of our founding fathers did believe in God, great, and that it influenced the way that they engaged with the text and some of the things that were in there. The First Amendment explicitly prohibits an establishment of a religion, or that you can't exercise a religion. So we get that freedom. And there were Bible readings in schools back in the 1800s and some of the early 1900s. There was some conflict over that, though, because of the version of the Bible that was read. So I think, that's important to note that there were lots of different there's different entities of Christians, and you have your Catholics and all these different entities that believe in a God, which is, with these early Americans, did. And so, and many people still do. So, but what's interesting though, is that when some of these lawmakers are like, back in my day, school was so wonderful and we had Bible readings. And so I went and looked it up and I was like, well, when did the Supreme Court remove Bible readings from schools? And
wait, we've had lawmakers say like, I grew up with this.
I mean, you'll hear lawmakers kind of talk about like the good old days and
the good old days,
that kind of stuff. And so I was like, okay, the early 60s. We're talking the early 60s when they removed this. And I was like, okay, if you were in the school in the early 60s and you really remember this, then you had to have been born by the early 50s. That would make
you're
you
like 70.
You're 70. You're like in your 70s now if you're like a lawmaker and you're talking about this. And like, that was a long time ago. So ultimately, like now what happens now? And I think that this is interesting. And this is like an important clarification. Not long ago, I think it was like in 2022, there was this case over in Bremerton School District, which is in Washington. I grew up going to Bremerton all the time as a kid. It's gorgeous over there. Crossing the ferry across Puget Sound. It was a great old time.
Look at you. Good old days.
Yeah, good old days. Those were my good old days. Okay. So this high school football coach, he would go at the 50-yard line and pray. Was it before or after the game? I'm not quite sure. Oh, after football games. And so some of the students would go join him. And then some people were like, that is against the law. That's against the Supreme Court ruling. You cannot do that. And so, it violates such and such establishment in the Bill of Rights. And so this coach argued that wasn't true, that the school prohibiting him from doing that was violating his religious freedom and free speech. And ultimately, the court ruled in favor of the coach, a 6-3 vote, to say that, yes, he can exercise his right to prayer after the game, right? But the difference here is that as a coach, he is not requiring students to participate. It is not school-led. It is individual-led off to the side. And there's no so like when I look at the Bible verse, for example, that to me explicitly violates the First Amendment, which and so it's like, well,
which is requiring participation.
Yes, which is requiring participation.
So,
so then it's like, well, do you okay, lawmaker, do you care about the Constitution and our amendment rights? Because those are really important, and you'll fight for some of them. But from my perspective, it's like, well, all of those amendments are important, and it's we can't require them. If we take the Bible premise and we apply it to this most recent ruling, it's like, yeah, okay, maybe for this moment of prayer, like this moment of silence,
right?
You know what, kid, if you're bringing the King James version to school, the Bible, by the way, that's like a huge book to be bringing every day. You could bring it at any point if you wanted to. Those kids are not prohibited from bringing that to school, but you could pull that out. You can do whatever you want for that 60 seconds. But it cannot be school led. So the premise of having a teacher read a Bible verse during school is counter to what has been ruled by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, here's one for you. And again, thank you for all of that. Totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's like the coach, it would be analogous if like I was a teacher at a school and I said grace or made a prayer before I ate my lunch, and like some other kids came over and said a prayer with me. It's like, oh, you're not required. Like, you don't, if you like to bless the food with me, that's fine. Yeah. So like, that's a very simple thing to understand. But we have so much concern. We passed a law this session. I can't remember exactly who passed it, but it was about prohibiting local municipalities from layering on additional laws or regulations around discrimination. Mm-hmm. And ultimately the argument was, look, we don't want our business people or whoever to be required to like bake the cake for the same-sex marriage or something like that. It's like, okay. And again, whether you agree with that or not, that was at least one of the arguments for it, which is we don't want, for instance, the lawmakers are saying like, this should be across the state. Boise shouldn't be requiring some people participate in these things and other people, all this stuff, right? Well, what about the teacher that might not be Christian? It's like, I have to read this? What if I'm Jewish? What if I'm,
Muslim,
Buddhist? What if I'm Muslim?
What if I'm atheist?
What if I'm atheist? What if I'm agnostic? But like, what if I'm atheist? Or like, what if it runs really counter to some other religion I have? Why would we defend the baker's right to not bake the cake if it offends their religious position, or why would we defend the county clerk's right to not issue a marriage license to two people that are same-sex marriage while not defending the teacher's right to read this thing or defend the student's right to not be subjected to this thing? These are questions. I'm like, we are defending religious freedoms in one arena and not in another.
Yes. Okay. Last thing I want to share, because I know
God
you
bless
like,
it.
yeah. Okay. So I think this is a good one.
My 3 o'clock might be canceling, so you might be stuck here. It's okay. It'd be hilarious.
She's like, I don't want to show up. So, this one is, I was just in DC, and I got to listen to Usha Vance, who is the second lady. Okay, the second lady of the United States. That's the woman that's married to the vice president.
Gotcha.
Okay, and also interesting, like fast fact, she is pregnant with baby number 4, and I think she's the very first second lady to be pregnant while her like husband's in office.
Got it.
Anyways, fast fact for you there.
Yeah, because they're pretty young, right? Like
yeah.
JD and she
I mean,
are
like
not
I have
that
no,
old.
I don't know how old they
I think
are.
they're like,
But their
aren't
kids
they
are young.
like just under 40 or something?
Well,
Like they're pretty young.
Yeah, like I mean, her kids look like they're in elementary school.
Yeah.
So yeah, they got young kids.
Yeah.
But so she spoke and she talked about how she has her summer reading challenge, and that the goal is to get kids to read. And so you can go look this up online. And ultimately, it's like it runs from June 1st to September 4th. And the purpose is to entice kids to read whatever they want. It's 12 books. And they just said, like, it's simple, no pressure. It's meant to be fun. And anyways, I just was like, yeah, I think that's great. Thank you so much for coming and speaking at this event for parents and promoting summer reading. Awesome.
God bless
I mean,
it.
like, just serious. Like, I was like, hey, that's great. Summer reading challenge, like super simple. This is something we can all get on board on. And you know what, Matt? Sometimes it's nice to have things where we see that we can all get on board.
Dude,
It's
right?
like,
Who's saying like stop the reading? I can't keep up. Like, I'm a man of like the world. You know what's really interesting? I can just.
wait, you're a man of the world.
I am.
What does that mean, Matt?
It means I like the world that exists that I can see and feel and touch.
Okay.
I prefer less of the world that only exists in my head, which is primarily books. I can have communication and conversations with lovely people like yourself hours and hours and hours a day, and I never get tired of it. It's probably why this works, because I got no problem running. But this is like the world. This is another human being. This is socializing. This is, you know, me playing with a pen the same way I've played with this pen the entire set. Like there's something about it. And I've always been that way. Now, mind you, I don't mind reading, but I would much rather like talk to somebody or, you know, engage in the garden or something. My sons, although they do enjoy, they're very social. They like, I can't even afford books anymore. Like we got my oldest son an 11 book series over Christmas break. He was done with it by the time he went back to school. I'm like, we can't afford this. We can't keep up.
Gosh.
Like the library
awesome.
doesn't have enough books.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So it's like, well, I don't need a summer reading challenge. It's like a weekly reading challenge. He's flying through
That's
the
amazing.
books, man. Yeah.
And I would say that I don't know how typical that is, because I don't know the percentage of children that love to read, but I love that we have people that's what they're going to talk about. We, in some fashion, I'm like, after the conversation that we've had today, I think, how can we as a community get back to some of the things that make our communities great and that make us enjoy interacting with each other, and that are topics that are like, that feel like almost like universal and that are not so contentious. And it's like, yeah, you know, like reading or being outside or, you know, like these sporting events or something, or floating down the river, or what did you do over the weekend? You know, I mean, some of these things that I feel like bring us closer together instead of like divide us and are hard, because it's just hard for people to navigate conversation. I'm not saying that like we shouldn't talk about the things that are hard, but that like, listen, if we only have things that are taking away from our margin of, like
Right.
the positive. If we only have things that are hard all the time, then there's nothing that's like filling us up and bringing us together and
Fill the bucket.
and allowing us to have some joy. I mean, I do enjoy. I do
Some
need
joy.
I do need joy in my life, and I'm not the only person that needs that.
Here's a very interesting problem that I've been kind of teasing out with people.
Okay.
People move here, like myself.
Like
okay.
you.
Like
you
me.
moved here.
I moved here. I knew nothing about the state. Still know very little about the state. I learn every day.
Just like, I'm sorry. It genuinely blows my mind. Because you are not the only person that I've met that they're like, yeah, someone told me I should move here. And I was like, okay. And I just like came here and bought a house and like that was the end of it. It's like I did that with my husband when we went to like fellowship up in New Hampshire, where like we hadn't been there.
Yeah, but you're going for professional pursuit, the whole thing.
Yes, but like to come here, it's like, whoa.
Phil McGrain's great-great-grandmother, after her husband died during the Irish potato famine, picked up her 9 kids and got on a boat and came here. So there was a time when that would not be so crazy. Right. There was a time when people were like, I need something better for my family. I need a better life. Yeah. And that was it.
Yeah.
For me, it was, is it better for my kids? Will there be better opportunity? I'm there. And people, the opportunity that existed, in my former community, it's like, oh yeah, you could be in like tech sales. Like you could probably try to go to like one of these colleges. By the way, if you shoot and miss, you're not moving back to this community. Like, because if you're not working 6-7 days a week and you're not doing all these things and you're not blah, 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 like I knew very, very, very few people who landed back in Danville, in the place where I was living. Anyway, so my point is that
took you on a side tangent. You always take people on a side tangent.
Bless
I just
you.
needed
you
to.
just wove it in. But one of the things that drove early people to America was religious freedom, right? That's clear, right? No big deal. One of the things that drives a lot of people here from the state that shall not be named is what I would describe kind of as like political freedom, right? They feel like they have political views that they can't engage in. And therefore they're like, where can I engage in these political pursuits? And it's like, oh, Idaho. Do you know anything about Idaho? No, but I know I could be conservative there. And I think that drives a lot of people here rather. Mm-hmm. That being said, when people land here, what do they have to talk about? Politics. What is the number one thing that will drive wedges between people? Politics. So to your point, where it's like, hey man, we need more pursuits that bring people joy, that we can rally around together, like reading. Can we just get together on reading? Can we get together on reading? And people that come here don't know anything, or a lot of people that come here don't know anything or very much about the state. What they do know is they were politically driven to some degree, political refugees. They say this all the time. And because that's their sphere of interest and engagement, they become engaged in local political, organizations and stuff. They talk nonstop about politics. They consume nothing but politics. A lot of them are still obsessed with the politics of their former state, and they bring them up at parties. Can you believe what California's doing? Or can you believe this?
We need to push people to go back to the clubs from like those early days. So when we have lawmakers who are like, I remember way back when, okay, maybe you do. Okay, maybe you were having Bible verses, all that stuff. But back in the day, they were also a part of like clubs like Kiwanis and Lion and Elks, all of those things, which mind you are more service and community oriented. And it's like, let's push people, like let's encourage people to go do those things. Because when we serve others, we feel good. Full stop. But when we engage with people on political issues, most people walk away like
fired up.
We got to push people to these clubs, Matt.
We have to push people towards areas and pursuits of interest that are apolitical. Yeah. Like your reading challenge, or engage people.
Usha Vance's
your reading challenge. Or we engage people like Senator Treg Burnt had this great compliment. He's like, I could talk to you for an hour. I still don't know what your political party is. I don't know what your political leanings are. Like you're super just common sense and you're like, think through things. And he was like, I love that about you because I don't even know. And what that does is it frees people to hang out with me. They're not hanging out with my political affiliation. They're not hanging out with my, and like, if we could have areas where people, it's like, no politics, right? Like, or political, like whatever. If we had that, oh, there's my 3:00. If we had that, then I think it would be, we would allow people to liberate themselves from these chains that they used to have and come back to reality.
Okay.
I deeply feel what you're talking about. And I think one of the unique problems with people moving here is they don't know what they want to pursue that's not related to politics. They're not driven here necessarily to engage in the outdoors. They're not driven here necessarily to engage in whatever, like everything, politics has invaded most of the arenas in their life. And it's like, we need to find ways to connect people on reading, on community pursuits, on these things. It's like, it's not politics, man. There's no politics here.
It's not. And I think for the people who have children in school, it's easier to engage in school or community-based or activity-based things because their kids are the ones right? The kids are the drivers of that, right? Meaning that like, oh, I'm going to participate in my elementary school because that's where my kids are. Or, oh, my kid's interested in basketball, so I'm going to do this camp. But a lot of these individuals who have come here are older, they're retired. And so for them, it's like, what do I really engage in? How do I really learn about this stuff? And what I would say is, let's start telling these people about the incredible opportunities there are for people of that age here to participate, to get involved, to give service, to have fun, to do those different things. I will tell you that X number of years ago, my very first podcast, a show that I was on, I got invited to be a co-host. And so I was a co-host on it. And I was scrolling through social media one day and I saw a gal who she did like some Disney stuff. I grew up loving Disney, so I stopped and listened to her. And as I listened to her, she spoke about how this just real tragedy in her life that had really that had been very traumatic for her, impacted her work. And so she really wasn't able to do the thing that she loved anymore. X number of years later, now she is here doing like social media, like content creating around Disney. And I was really fascinated by it. So I reached out to her. She lives in a different state and I asked her to be on the show. She agreed. She came on and her story was like deeply moving to me. It was one of the last episodes that I did on that podcast.
That series, yeah.
That podcast. So I keep following her and she has X number of years later, she has a content creation retreat. And people can sign up to go to it. And I thought, okay, like I'm in this space because I have a new podcast and I do some social media stuff. I want to go learn from her. So I go and I learn, and this was the very first one she put on, and I met some really awesome women there. And I had a good time engaging in something where we were all learning together, and every person was there for a different reason, like it's different social media stuff. So then I'm learning and I'm going, and what she realizes is that instead of putting on those types of experiences, she loves Disney and she notices that people would rather have kind of like a very simple retreat around Disney. Now that might sound odd or weird or whatever if you don't love Disney. Pick something else that you love. So last fall, I saw that she was going to have a couples retreat. And she had a lot of women's retreats around like at Disney, and you do some fun Disney stuff, but then you're also just at like this gorgeous kind of resorty home and you're hanging out there and they're doing different things together over several days. So in the fall, I said, hey, husband, what would you think? I'm going to hopefully finish my comprehensive exam for my PhD. I'd love to celebrate with you. Like this might be kind of fun, something we've never done before. You want to go do this thing? And so he said, yeah, let's go. Like whatever you want, Lex, we'll go do that. So we go. And my husband said to me, he was like, just so you know, I'm going there to spend time with you, not to make friends, not to do these other things. Like,
dude, going to sit in the husband corner is so painful, by the way. I'm glad he made this clear to you.
Yeah. So we go, and I know a couple of the people who are going to be there because I had met the very first one. And what was so interesting to me was that they had some like pickleball games, like all sorts of stuff, like exercise class, like fun things to do, plus going to Disneyland. My husband had such a good time interacting with the people there, which he did not anticipate. He went there and I went there to hang out with him. Like we went there to have a good time together and to have some, this was a common thing that all the people there enjoyed Disney. So that was kind of like the thing that brought everyone together. But the thing that my husband walked away with was, I had a fantastic time with my wife, but it was good for him to meet people that he'd never met before and interact in a way that he hadn't anticipated. it really filled his bucket. I don't play pickleball with him the way that he can engage with other people. And there was a woman there who was really good, who had taken classes, and she was teaching people how to play, like how to be better pickleball players.
I love this.
And my husband like loved it. And so it was, I'm telling the story because it's like, I think sometimes in these instances where it's like, I don't really want to engage in that thing. I don't want to try that new thing. I don't want to go give that service. I don't want to learn that new sport because it requires me to get out of my comfort zone. And so then people fall and they default to things that are easy or like, you know, this political stuff. And I would say engage in the thing that's going to get you out and be social, or maybe learn something new, go do something that you love, or engage in some service, because we need more of that in our lives.
God bless America, Alexis Morgan. I always appreciate you. Your meter's about to run out. You got to go.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on today. Thanks for doing this series with me. Shall we do like one last one right at the end of the session?
Maybe we can do
just like a recap.
A recap, yeah.
You know, just kind of what.
I mean,
the
if
session
you want to
was about.
have me on, sure. This is your show, your choice.
I know, but I mean, you know, it takes you driving from wherever you drove from, the moon. I don't know. You better not be here twice in one day. It's a train wreck.
Never again. Never again.
But I really want to know. Are these final bills smoke screens for something else?
It's a great question.
That's a great question.
We should find out.
Or are they just like a black eye with like, be quiet or we're going to keep pushing this one, right? Because that's another one. It's like, this bill is out there now. If you guys keep barking about this, we're going to start pushing this again. Or I can just have them keep it in the drawer, but we know it's on the table. Like all of the political nuances and the levers, so wild to me. Wild. Anyway, thanks for coming on. We'll do it again.